This video is going to talk you through the first major assignment for Module 1. So before we get started, go ahead and pause and pull up those directions for the Module 1 major assignment. It's your learning segment that you will be planning. And if you'll pull up those directions, you'll see there's also a template for the assignment, and you may want to go ahead and open that up as well, and then you'll have that available as we're talking through the different parts of the assignment. So for Module 1, your major assignment is to plan a learning segment. Now, a learning segment is 3 to 5 continuous days of teaching. And so the topic that you cover on those 3 to 5 days is going to be the same. You're going to break apart different aspects of that topic for each day of the lesson so that they build on each other. So whatever you're teaching on day 1 should build right onto whatever's going to be taught on day 2, and so on and so forth. Now, should you have 3 days or 5 days or 4 days? It really doesn't matter. You just need 3 to 5 days planned for your learning segment. Now, some topics need 5 days, some need 3, some need 4. So that's why there's that window of 3 to 5 days for the learning segment. It's not necessarily true that if you do 5 days, that's better than 3, that kind of thing. It's just whatever is needed for your specific topic that you're working with. So you want to think about, what do you want to cover in those 3 to 5 days in that learning segment? Okay, so remember, the learning segment covers those 3 to 5 days, and you want each day to build on each other. I can't emphasize that enough in your thinking. You'll want to pick a topic, a grade level, and then you want to brainstorm your ideas of what you could do for that learning segment. And this is where working with your assigned partners comes into play in that early brainstorming. Get with them, talk with them, tell them your ideas, tell them what you're thinking, and then give feedback to each other. What do you think would work? If you are listening to an idea and you have a better idea, please share it with your classmate and help them pull together a really good learning segment. And then when you go to the template, and you may want to pull the template up, and let's look at that. And I'm going to walk down what you're going to make sure you include on that template. So the first part of your template is covering the entire learning segment. So that's those 3 to 5 teaching days. That's where the teaching candidate is your name, your content area and subject, grade level, and then you're going to list the TEKS that you will cover for the entire learning segment, not just on the first day or the second day, but this is something you want to cover for the entire learning segment. And then you're going to write objectives, again, for the entire learning segment. Now, those objectives are going to start with students will be able to, and then that's going to be followed by a verb, and then what you want them to accomplish and what you want them to be able to do at the end of each of your lessons. And those objectives should have a straight line to your TEKS. You should be able to directly connect your objectives to different parts of your TEKS. Okay? Then your central focus is a paragraph, and that paragraph is set up in this way. You're going to write an intro sentence that says essentially what the learning segment is about, and then you're going to go through each day. So you'll say, on day 1, this is going to happen. And then on day 2, this is going to happen. And so on and so forth. We can come back later and add some things to this central focus as we progress through the semester, as you find out more about your vocabulary, because vocabulary can be included in that central focus if you want to. But the main thing that you want to get into that central focus is that intro uh, um, sentence that says this is what the learning segment is about, and then you want to cover each day. And then the key to the central focus is that you want to very clearly show the connection between each day. So you want to show how what you're doing on day one, then tell us how that builds on day two, and then how that builds on day three, and so on and so forth for your entire learning segment. So that's the key to a quality central focus, is not just listing what's happening, but demonstrating how it all links together, and how does it come together to really teach your students each day, so that by the end they can fully realize those TEKS and those learning objectives that you have laid out. So that first section of the template covers the whole learning segment. Then when you get into the daily lesson part of the template, that's about one of your lessons. So that's going to be either day one or day two or day three of your learning segment. And you pick which day it is. It doesn't have to be day one. If you want to jump right into day two or three, that's fine. You'll just list that on that template of what day it is. Then you want to give an idea of how much time this is going to take. Is this a 90-minute class, a 60-minute class, 55-minute class, whatever it is? Then you're going to list your TEKS for just that lesson. So remember, up above you talked about all your TEKS for your whole learning segment. This is going to be just for this lesson. And it could be that you want to take one of your TEKS and you want to highlight a section and say, just this section is what I'm going to cover in this lesson. That's fine too. Then the next highlighted area is your objectives. And again, you're connecting those objectives straight into your TEKS. This is, students will be able to give us a verb, and then what are they going to be able to do, and how are you going to assess it? You know, if you're going to say students will be able to discuss The Great Gatsby, well, how do you measure that? That they just talk to each other? And does that go back to the TEKS? You want to really zone in on that verb. And then how am I going to measure that they accomplished that? So think about all of that when you're writing your objectives. And if you get stuck, feel free to contact me and we can talk through writing those objectives. The next area is the block that is your instruction. And I can't emphasize enough here that you want to write a description here that is clear enough and is detailed enough so that if something happens to you and the teacher next door needs to jump in and teach your lesson, that teacher could do it from your description. So when you say discussion, okay, what's going to be the focus of the discussion? What questions are you going to ask? What are you going to specifically do in that section of the lesson? So this is where you want to be detailed. Now you have a list there of kind of this hook. You can also think of it as an intro, but essentially you want to, in that beginning part of the lesson, it's not just grab your students' attention. It's not just about entertaining them, but it's about setting the stage for what are you going to cover in that lesson as well, and getting them pulled into it. Also activating that prior knowledge. So even though you may be starting with day one of your lesson, they come in with some knowledge of some kind about what you're teaching. So how are you going to activate that? That's really what you want to do there, is activate that prior knowledge and think thoughtfully about what you're putting here. If you are having them come in and respond to a prompt that you have listed? Does that prompt have anything to do with your lesson? How does it get them thinking? How does it activate their prior knowledge? So, really think about that. Then you want to think about modeling whatever you are demonstrating, whatever you're talking about. If you're asking them to think through something, you're modeling that process. And then you're constantly checking for understanding. So that's that informal assessment of asking those questions and seeing what they are learning at different points in your teaching. You're going to have guided practice and independent practice, and then some kind of closure. That closure should connect back up to that intro. They should be the bookends to the lesson. They should be connected. Now, you may not have guided practice and independent practice for every lesson. You might not. But think about what is important for you to have there. You may not have to model every day of the learning segment. So think about how you can set that up over the course of the 3 to 5 days and what would be important to include in this one particular day. Again, be very specific here about what you're doing. And then you will, if you scroll down, you'll see that you'll need to list your assessments. And so you're going to have informal assessments where you're asking some questions throughout the lesson. You're also going to have a more formative assessment that you have at the end of the lesson. And this can be some homework, this could be an assignment that you assign in that way. That's completely fine. It doesn't have to be a big test for it to be considered an assessment. This is assessing how did you do on those objectives, those learning objectives set forth for this particular lesson. Also list on there, how are you going to give your students feedback? So once you grade that, are you just going to give it back to them and then that's it? Or what's your plan for talking through with your students about how they did? The last part is your references. So if you pulled some things from other sources, here's where you cite those sources and give them credit in that last part. So just to recap, you're going to start brainstorming for your learning segment. That learning segment is a continuous 3 to 5 days of teaching. Meet with your assigned partners, start talking about it, give each other feedback. Then you're going to start looking at that template and start filling it in. The top section is for the whole learning segment. And then the second part of the template is for one particular day in your learning segment that you will dig into. And you will only have to complete the highlighted sections of that lesson plan that you see there. Add any references that you might pull from to add to your lesson plan. And keep in mind that this lesson plan we'll be using throughout the other modules to add to work from, to embed certain extras into it, that kind of thing. So don't feel like that once you get it to this point that you turn it in, that that's the end for this. We're going to keep building, going back into it, looking at it, seeing how we can restructure, revise it, and make it stronger. Again, if you have any questions, please contact me and let's talk through it.